for students recovering from COVID as well. Just a little bit of background about the origin of spoon theory. Christine Miserandino was the first to kind of coin spoon theory, and she had a blog called But You Don't Look Sick. And she explained going out to a diner with a friend late at night, and the friend who had been a longtime friend and a roommate talking with her and asking her, what is the actual experience of dealing with a chronic illness? And she was a little bit taken back by her friend's question, because she felt like her friend had seen her through a lot of episodes of her experience with illness, but felt that actually I think her friend was trying to really understand what it meant from a day-to-day living experience with chronic illness. And so she explains that she grabbed a couple of spoons off the table, and she had this kind of inspiration with the spoons that were around the diner, and she started giving this kind of handful of spoons to her friend, and she had 12 spoons in all, and she said, this is the spoons that you have for the day. And her friend said, oh, can I have more? And she said, oh, this is going to be a good thing. No, you can't have more. And then she explained that each spoon was a token of energy, and she had her friend talk about what are some of the just regular tasks in your day. And then she stopped her friend and said, okay, for each task, for each even smaller task within those tasks, each time that you use energy, I'm going to take away a spoon. When I take away the spoons and you have no more spoons, you have no more energy to do anything else. And so pretty soon her friend realized that just getting dressed, just having a shower, getting ready for the day, before she had even left for work, she had used up 6 of the 12 spoons that she had for the day. And so Christine used this analogy to explain that her life has to be a calculation of how much energy she has for a certain thing and how she's going to spend that energy, whether she skips a shower, gets dressed, and then so that she has more energy for work, or whether she takes a shower, gets ready, and uses spoons, and then maybe has the rest of the evening that she can't do much else because of her allotment of spoons is gone. And so this is kind of where the origin of spoon theory came, and this has been taken on by a lot of communities in the chronic illness and disability and in other areas to kind of help people understand the strategizing that it takes to approach a day. So one of the really important quotes, I think, from Christine's blog was, I explained that when you are healthy, you expect to have a never-ending supply of spoons, but when you're facing a chronic illness and now have to plan your day, you need to know exactly how many spoons you're starting with. And this is a really key insight, I think, when we're talking to students that are dealing with a temporary illness or are recovering from COVID, that they now have to do this calculation. So the key point of the blog story and the key point of spoon theory is the difference in being sick or being healthy is having to make choices and do the consciously think about things that maybe when we're healthy or the rest of the population don't have to do. And that healthy people that don't have to deal with a chronic illness have the luxury of life without having a choice, without having to make these choices, and that's a gift that most people take for granted. So basically, in this analogy, spoons equal finite units of energy. And I'll let Delphine explain a little bit about what that might mean.
Yeah, so there's a lot of images around this that you can find, and we'll talk about that a bit later, I think. But different things require different amounts of energy, and obviously they'll be different for different people as well. But if you take a minute to imagine that you only had 12 spoons today, how many of you already used up? You know, you've got out of bed, you've got dressed, maybe you had a shower. That's a third of your spoons gone already. If you've gone into work, that's now over half of them, right? So so you're not going to have energy to do housework or go out or anything else at the end of the day. So it's a physical way of picturing how much energy you have, and thinking about what is going to use up your energy, so that when you don't have much, because there's trauma or you've been sick or something, for a temporary amount of time, you have to think about it. I found it really interesting during COVID, because I'm a spoonie myself. This was really easy because it's second nature to me. Once I got sick, everything else went out the door because I knew I had to conserve my spoons. It was easy. I never pushed myself. And same with a lot of my spoonie friends. But a lot of non-spoonies, let's call them, they were the people who pushed themselves to go back to work early and ended up being sick for longer and things like that. So this kind of helps thinking about that. There's a lot of variations and developments on it. Flick to the next slide for me. Yep. So this is the one. So if you think about it in terms of the neurodivergent community, we might have different numbers of types of spoons, right? There's other analogies, with like D&D things and forks and knives for different things, but trying to keep it quite simple, right? So if someone only has one sensory spoon, once they've become overstimulated or there's too much noise, that's it. They're pretty much in a dark room for the rest of the day. You can't move those spoons around. If they've used up all of their focus spoons, that's it. They're not going to be able to focus for the rest of the day. So and different people obviously will have different numbers there, but that's just another way of looking at it, of actually going, I only have this much, right? Once I've used up my social spoons, that's it. Probably for a couple of days, I don't want to be around people. What is really important about it is the thing with the spoon theory, next slide, is if you run out of spoons, you burn out. You can't replenish your spoons on any given day. You get them back the next day. And of course, if you've had a bad sleep, you wake up with a couple less spoons, a couple of nights, right? So on any given day, you might only wake up with 6 instead of 12. So you're doing that kind of calculation every morning. But if you're, say, having a good day, you might try and make up for lost time, overextend yourself and push yourself beyond, that kind of push through, which, sometimes people do after you're sick. You try and go back to work too soon or whatever, and you end up super tired at the end of the day. You've used up too much. If you keep doing that, you sink into a deeper form of burnout until you're like, that kind of absolute physical, you're out for weeks kind of burnout. So that's where it's kind of more of a spiral than a circle. You don't rest and you're back to normal the next day. It's like each day you're one less spoon until you wake up with 0 spoons, and it's going to take weeks to get those back. So that's quite important if you see people overextending themselves, right? When students are dealing with trauma, a lot of it's just spoon theory really helps accept the limitations and helps put limits on things. When I say to my friends, I have no spoons, they know exactly what I mean. There's no other explanation needed. So just part of it's having that language within our community of going, I have no spoons, and that's it, right? And that is actually, it makes it really safe instead of saying, oh, I can't face people right now, which makes you feel kind of bad. Just going, I have no spoons, right? It's a lot easier to say. So part of it's around that communication. So I'll hand back to Brittany.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, like Delphine said, it's about strategizing of, okay, knowing that you only have a certain amount of spoons means that you are going to look at the world differently, and you're going to make sure that you have the spoons that you need for those different things. And so, yes, for students especially, thinking about it as those energy slots, and like Delphine said, not making it a thing of guilt of I don't have spoons, but just knowing that there is a limit on that energy, and could be a limit on a specific energy for a specific thing, like in the neurodiverse image that she showed of it might be specific spoons for social or specific spoons for physical. So this was the other quote from Christine that was talking about just kind of, it's a beautiful freedom to think about that you don't have to strategize. But like Delphine said, sometimes that strategizing and knowing how to strategize is actually a benefit when something like a trauma hits or a temporary illness like COVID. So how we can use this to help students facing things. It gives a very tangible image. It gives them a visual to kind of wrestle with, to understand that there is an actual limit, and putting those limits on rather than having kind of the unlimited energy that we're used to.
Brittany, you're at 12 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do you want me to fly through this bit, Brooks?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a whole lot of stuff on our slide, so I am going to fly through it. So just to look at later. So this is all stuff we put into the workshop around what we can do around planning, helping them ask for extensions. There's things like energy mapping worksheets, considering assessment relating, alternative tasks, and aggregates. Then we've got a bit of information about brain fog. Just going to kind of skip over that. And then can you skip to the disclaimer?
Yeah.
So just to be kind of really careful about this is quite important to me. So any kind of illness or trauma does reduce people's energy, but I want to reinforce that it's important not to appropriate a term that belongs to a community. So students are temporary spoonies in that they're not used to having to manage their spoons. I've got a neurotypical or healthy friend who uses the glass analogy. When you're healthy, you wake up with a full glass and you can top it up over the day if you need it. When you're sick, you only ever wake up with half a glass, but you can top it back up if it gets almost empty, like by resting. But if it gets completely empty, you're done, right? So you have to top it back up before you're empty. So it's always that balancing act. Like, I like people to understand spoonies, but I don't want someone to say I'm out of spoons if they're not a spoonie, because it's like, it's a fine line, I guess. So there's some other resources in there, and then we wanted to do breakout rooms. So we've got a mirror board, and just considering these questions, just to drop some ideas on the mirror board. And this will be available in the thing afterwards. It'll be put on that lands page. Energy conserving strategies, activities that replenish your energy, and gems of wisdom you've passed on to your students who might be going through this or who you've found this. I'm just going to drop the mirror board link in the chat and then find the breakout rooms.
And yeah, definitely we can drop the slides into sharing the slides. And as you have a think over kind of some of those resources that you might, or some of the ways that you've talked to students about kind of how they could map out their energy, think about things like those using things that we do as learning advisors like Pomodoro or weekly planners, but weekly planners with a specific focus on making sure that those rest times and breaks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll set up the breakout rooms. We might only have 3 or 4 minutes. But yeah, cool. Okay, create.
So in your breakout rooms, just discuss and use that mirror board to kind of have a play with different resources that you've used.
So the board's gone up on the Atlantis Padlet. We're leaving it open to editing. So even people who weren't here might have thoughts and ideas they can put up. Or over the day if you have things, and this could be quite a useful resource, I think, especially the gems of wisdom. I was the one who wrote if something's worth doing, it's worth half-assing, which is something I have to tell myself and my students all the time. You're better off to get 5% than nothing, or 40. Like, better to wash 2 plates than wash no plates, because at least then you have 2 clean plates. right? So and that's a really hard mentality sometimes to get around. People don't want to submit imperfect work, but when you kind of, yeah, and it's just phrased in a way that students kind of like, right? It's not better. When you say better than 5%, it's very formal, but when you say it's something's worth doing, it's worth half-assing, that's kind of student language, I guess. So yeah, that'll stay open. Then we're gonna have some time to maybe reflect on how this and I guess this is just reflect on it. What strategies have you used while advising students through COVID recovery? Because going forward, not just COVID, this is the flu, this is colds, this is trauma or death in the family, all those kind of things that happen. But also, how could you maybe use this to help students? And I think, sometimes even just having a visual poster of some kind on your wall that you can refer to if a student in need is something to kind of direct them at, or something that makes sense to you. Cool. I don't know if we've got time for any questions, probably not, but feel free to drop some on chat and we'll answer them if we can. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Brittany and Delphine. A really great way to start the morning. Thank you, and really good visual for someone like me who loves to see something. Thank you so much for the time that you've taken to present this morning. We've just got a few moments before our next workshop. So if you've got any questions, it might be a good time to pop them in the chat, and also potentially there's an opportunity to continue this kōrero in the breakout rooms at noon.
Delphine, I do see one question saying, what is an energy conserving strategy you've used for yourself? Would you want to give one example that you have?
Yeah, probably one of the main ones that I do pretty consistently. I actually enjoy meal planning and meal prep, but the moment either me or my partner starts getting sick, we go to Food Bag or HelloFresh or something, just so that we can still eat healthy. But it's minimal. It takes away. I don't have to think about what we're going to eat. I don't, and the prep is pretty minimal and easy. And I actually enjoy cooking, so it's not too bad. And when I am well, I always do the thing of cooking extra and freezing it. So there's always pre-made meals in the freezer, things like that. So that's kind of almost my first go-to when I know I'm sick or going to have a busy week. It's like, right, we're getting Food Bag. Costs a little bit more. I know it's not always applicable for students, but we're fortunate enough to be in a student where we can spend a little bit extra.
I've worked with a student too who had to, just kind of from her disability, had to monitor her spoons, and she talked about having pre-cut frozen chicken or pre-cut frozen vegetables as well in the fridge so that she could still eat, or having a large supply of kind of really good protein bars and granola bars, because she knew she couldn't miss a meal, but at the same time she knew that prepping a meal or stopping for a meal would take one of her spoons. So just those kinds of things, or prepping her bag with all of those snacks and things the night before she so that she didn't have to use a spoon in the morning before she went to school. I think this is something too we're seeing a lot with students now, with the ability to watch lectures online. That can be part of the accounting as well. I've seen students now doing the accounting of, okay, I could go into class, but that will take all of my energy spoons, and so then I won't be able to study and work on my assignment. Or I could stay and watch my lecture online, and then I would have more time to go to work, and I could do my study and start on my assignment after work. So those kinds of accounting, I think there's more availability now with online lectures as well.
Yeah, and I do that a lot too, just with the ability to work from home. If most of the time. But it's like if I wake up and I've had a bad night's sleep, I'm like, I'm working from home today.
So we underestimate, I think, how many spoons are used up when students have got a lot of readings, and every reading is a spoon, and they've got a pile of them, and then there's nothing left after they've done their readings, for example.
Yeah, and that's compounded if, you know, there's difficulty with reading if they've got a SLD, for instance. You know, it's not one spoon, it's 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, so and again, that's where kind of you're only going to be able to do 1 reading a day. So how do we break that up?
Yeah, I think I think
I was just going to say, and how do you keep up? I can go, Brittany. How did Donu?
I was going to say, kind of like Delphine said, sometimes even just I think as a learning advisor, being an official role, but giving permission for students to half-ass things is a big deal. Because I think that students feel like, I can't come to a learning advisor and say that I'm going to half-ass something. But for us to say, you know, you have to prioritize which reading is important for you right now. If it's for informing your assignment, just do that reading.
Adult students are the worst at that. They come and they think they have to get A's. And I actually got given a piece of advice when I was studying. I was working for Science and Society, and I was taking a couple of their papers. And Rianne, my boss, actually said to me, "If you're getting A's, you're doing too much study and not enough work." And it was like, actually, you're an adult. You have work. You have a family. If you're getting A's, you're not spending enough time with your kids, or, you know, something. You don't need to get A's. There's nothing wrong with a B. And adult students are especially bad at that because, you know, they might have given up work for a year or something to study. So they feel this pressure. But yeah.
Thank you for the good questions. Thank you for the good kōrero.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great kōrero. Thank you.